Welcome to Fix and Fly, the business podcast, which identifies common business issues for you to watch out for in your day-to-day business life. So tune in every fortnight where we speak to leaders of corporates to SMEs where you can implement their strategies into your business. I'm your host, Larissa Logan from Fixity, where we help turn businesses around. Hi John, welcome to the Fix and Fly podcast.
Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So, I'm super passionate about the construction sector. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you're seeing in the sector at the moment. Before we dive into that, can you just tell our listeners a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I'm a partner in a boutique firm called Cuncannon Partners that deals with our clients' commercial needs, regulatory needs and litigation needs. And within that litigation, of course, there's some insolvency, which you might touch on. I've been in the industry for a number of decades. So, I've had a bit of experience in small, medium and large projects, acting for principals, contractors, dealing with sort of structural issues, but also litigation matters.
What's the number one thing you're seeing with your clients at the moment in the construction sector? What are they coming to see you for?
I guess overall the number one thing is concern. They're worried about starting projects. They're worried about pricing projects. They're worried about their supply risks. That's always the way in construction industry, but there are external factors, obvious external factors at the moment, which are really putting pressure on supply chains. And so if you're embarking on a project now, you're really trying to assess what the risks are. We're seeing a lot of concern about supply chain. And that's not just fuel. That's anything to do with plastics. And you think about pipes or whatever it might be within a construction industry. So how do you get cost certainty? How do you get delivery certainty? In all construction projects, you're looking for certainty over the timing and the price, the old adage of on time, on price and quality. But how do you get that in this environment? How do you get it with these external shocks? And that's what I'm spending a lot of time talking to clients about, just trying to understand those risks, trying to advise them on, help them through that process of starting a project or holding a project.
And so this really relates to contracts that they've potentially signed
bit of both.
Months or years earlier?
Yeah. With construction, it's a long project from thinking about something, getting the land, thinking, planning it, entering into the contracts and running through it, depending on the size of the project. But I tend to do sort of medium and larger scale projects. They might run over years. So I'm getting a combination of people coming halfway through saying, what does this mean? What happens here? Whose responsibility is it? Usually it's a very positive thing. You're always trying to solve problems, not, last recourse is litigation, right? The first recourse is trying to solve things for clients. But I also mean at the start of projects, people are thinking about building a warehouse, they're thinking about building an office, they're thinking about doing a townhouse development. 6 months ago, 8 months ago, they were feeling reasonably optimistic about that. Things looked okay, it looked like we were on the turn. And now not so much for obvious reasons. So my job is hopefully to bring some experience to the table to try and talk them through those things.
What are some practical steps that business owners could take when they're thinking about entering into contracts so they're not having to see you in kind of 12, 18 months' time? Are there some key provisions that they should be putting in to protect them around price increases?
For me, there's the sort of, there's the front end side of construction. That's primarily me. And then obviously if things go wrong, there's the back end, which is litigation. So let's just talk about the front end. There's no substitution for good planning. Sophisticated clients will spend a lot of time planning, looking at the land, looking at the risks, trying to understand exactly what they're doing. A lot of time thinking about risks that they can control. Then you're looking at the design, how you can maximize your design, how you can value engineer and save money through that. This is before you're actually getting into the full construction contract. So my advice, depending on what part of the construction industry you're working in, but for the medium and larger projects, if you have the time to plan, work out the risks you can control and talk about the risks you can't control. And then you have a set of conditions around that. You're placing those risks, the contractor's rightly pricing those risks, and you're trying to get a fair contract where everybody makes money. What you don't want to be doing is an unfair contract because it'll bound to end in failure. You don't want to be trying to squeeze people too much. And some of my principal clients will hate me saying that, but you need people to succeed. It's much better to perform and manage performance than it is to punish bad behaviour.
It's really challenging in the construction sector with pricing, margins. It seems
it's really challenging.
Yeah, for a long time it's been a race to the bottom. We've seen a lot of business failure over the last 2 years. 95% of my work has been in the construction sector with liquidations, advisory work, IRD payment plans. How do we fix that problem? How can we solve that so everyone does make money?
It'll sound cliched, but I mean, this is about honesty, transparency. It's about being a grown-up in the room. It's not about sort of keeping secrets and trying to make secret margins and trying to sort of pretend that that's the price, but it's not really the price. That's really hard because obviously everyone in the chain, from the principal, the design team, the head contractors, the subcontractors, the suppliers, everyone's trying to make money. We get that. But what you're trying to get is a fair price for a fair job. And that's the bland statement. That's obviously hard in practice. But to the extent you can engage early with all of the people, different people, principal might be engaging with the head contractor might be engaging with the trades. But what you're trying to do is get everybody to understand that everyone's trying to make money, trying to get a proper price for this. And then everyone's happy with the job. Everybody gets paid. Everyone's happy on site, which is hugely important. The building gets built. Everyone gets paid. Everyone's happy. Where it goes wrong is where it's adversarial and there's distrust and there isn't that transparency and honesty. A lot of the bigger players, the bigger principals who are building, have relationships with contractors and they build up that trust over years. A lot of the head contractors have a relationship with their subcontractors and you need to rely on those and work with those. Because if things go wrong, they might take a hit on one job because they've got another job. So they'll work through those issues together. So that's what you're trying to do. That's what you're trying to bring together, some transparency. Obviously, you then have to deal with the external shocks. And how do you deal with the external shocks? Life's like that. Don't have a war every time, but you might have a leaky building, you might have a regulation change, you might have all these things, and then you're looking at the contract to work out what your contractual position is, but ultimately you want to get together and talk about it first. $1 on the conversation will save you $10 in the litigation.
Yeah, totally agree with you. So I'm speaking with a lot of SME kind of subcontractors, 5 to 20 staff. They are telling me the subcontract agreement is hugely in the head contractor's favour.
Yes.
And they have very little ability to change any provisions in there.
And that would be right, wouldn't it? Because it's a power thing, isn't it? I mean, you've got a big head contractor. The head contractor would say it's a power thing because it's a big principal and they want the job. But it's a disproportionate amount of power for a head contractor. And of course, the principal pays the head contractor. The head contractor's trying to take their fee and their margins. And then the further down the chain you go, the higher risk it is. And unfortunately, for a lot of sub-trades, they're last.
Yes.
And they just haven't got the sophistication of those main contractors, either through legal representation or just simply power, leverage in the negotiations.
Yeah.
So it's a real problem. The subcontractor agreements are a problem. Retentions and getting retentions released are a problem. Just getting paid is a problem. They're last. And as you know, a lot of these companies, as you say, are small businesses. They're thinly capitalized. They just haven't the cash flow reserves to take one hit, but certainly not 2 or 3. And then when the market turns and things get tight, they're taking 2 or 3 hits with no cash flow, and that's where the liquidations. I mean, you know more about this than me, but you look at the figures. I mean,
absolutely.
What is it? 30% of liquidations in the construction industry. The construction industry is not 30% of the economy, right? So it just shows you where the risk is.
Yeah.
It's a problem that the head contractors need to look at, but it's a question that the principal should ask. It's all right for a principal to say, well, that's your problem, you sort out your subcontractors, but ultimately it's a principal problem as well.
Yeah.
Because the subcontractors don't get paid, they don't sign off their work, you can't get your co-compliance, the whole thing grinds to a halt. So the key message is we're all in it together. Everyone should be paid. Everyone should be open, honest and transparent. It's not a document to punish, it's a document, a roadmap of how you should behave.
Yeah, and I think that's great, right? But in reality, it's just not happening. And so what we're seeing is subcontractors. There are some head contractors out there that are amazing. They're working with their subbies. They're really going above and beyond to help them, right? So I take my hat off to them. But from what I am hearing from these subbies that we are dealing with, they have very little power. They either take the work as is or they pass it up and someone else will take it. It's really challenging for them. And then they'll get 12 months down the road and we enter into a shock with the fuel prices, and then they're underwater.
No, it's not good for the project. It's not good for, it's obviously particularly not good for them, but it's not good for the head contractor either because they've got issues with their subcontractor.
Exactly, and if you lose them, you have to replace them.
You have to replace them, that's
rework,
extra cost.
Extra
that
cost,
risk sits
delays,
with the head
timing.
contractor, so the principal sitting there saying, well, that's your problem, head contractor. So look, you can, under the contract, ask your head contractor whether they've been paid. You can put these things in. Now, it's just, you shouldn't have to do that as a principal, but it's no use the principal sticking their head in the sand and going, well, it's not my problem because your building won't get built. So I think there's some early warnings. You know when you walk on a site whether it's a happy site. It's amazing to me how many principals don't walk on a site. You walk on a site, are they happy? They're getting paid, they're happy. If people aren't turning up, they're doing other jobs, they're not happy, you should know there's something wrong. I don't expect board members of principals to turn up on site, but I do expect a project manager to turn up on site. I do expect the person who's got responsibility of conduct of everybody, overall charge of that, which is often the project manager. I do expect them to be on site. I do expect them to be checking in with subbies. Have you been paid? How's it going?
Yeah,
do you know what's
absolutely.
going on? How is the timing? Do you know when you're turning up on site, or are you getting a call the night before that you're not turning up on site, or you are turning up on site? A good project manager is going to be crucial because they're the one on site with the holistic view of what's going on. The principal has been involved up front. They've kind of let the contract. Now they're just waiting for their building. They've got other things to do because they're running a business, right? So a project manager is crucial in that, and I'd encourage people to look at those contracts and see, what site observation really means. Does it mean phoning up the head contractor and saying, is it all right? Or does it mean just turning up randomly and seeing what's going on site?
Exactly.
Does it mean phoning up your subbies?
Yeah.
That's along the way. Now, if it all seems okay, and then you get to the end and the subbies are still not being paid, that is a problem.
What should subbies be looking for when they are, signing these contracts in regards to retentions?
I'm going to start with the trust model again. Do you trust your head contractor? Have you worked with them before? I mean, who are you dealing with? Everything's a people business, right? So if you're getting into a contractual relationship with the person, do you trust them? Do you know them? Have you done your due diligence on the deal? Or have they a terrible reputation and you're going into it on the hope that it's going to be okay for you? Because here's the news, it probably won't be, right? Past performance is the best determinant of future performance. So if you know they've had trouble with subcontractors before, be aware. Now, do you have the luxury of not doing that job and doing another job? Commercial decision. But you're going to be more wary. Next, on their level, they're engaging with the head contractor and saying, right, what is the program? When do you want me? What does the head contractor say about the flexibility of this so I can plan, so I'm not left with supply chain issues, I'm not left with resourcing issues. So you're having a conversation so you're hoping that you're planning it properly so there's no surprises. Then you're looking at your contract and saying, well, let's just say that. Let's just say that you'll give me notice. Let's just say that you're... Now, I know it's hard because they don't want to spend money on lawyers to look at the contract, but just relying on a piece of paper and hope it does the job isn't going to work ultimately when it goes wrong. I mean, it's great in New Zealand. We've got a great set of standard contracts, but jobs are different. People are different. And you've just got to assess the risks. You've got to spend the time planning.
Yeah, and I think the number one piece of advice I say to my clients is get advice early. And
Yeah,
so getting a lawyer to run
I'll come
their
back
eye
to my
over that.
$1 up front will save you
Exactly.
$10 later.
Yeah.
When the time you're trying to enforce against a contractor for retentions that haven't been paid when the head contractor might even have wound up, I mean, it's a lot of money and it's a hard road. Litigation's expensive in this country, even quickfire litigation under the Construction Contracts Act and the adjudication, and there are some protections in there, but it's still tough. Litigation is tough. So just take a little bit of time up front and it'll save you a lot of heartache later.
And some of the stories that I'm hearing around retentions is at the very last minute when they're due, there is a claim that comes through and it's completely gone.
Yeah.
And then so you've got subcontractors having to then go through legal processes to try to recover those. And they might spend 12 months. It means that they're not focused on growing the business or running the business. They're distracted.
Correct. And that's effectively the profit, right? Because
Yeah.
they're waiting for that last bit to come out. And they've
their
just
cash
done,
flow, which
and
is
that's the
like,
cash flow.
yeah,
It's
low
a
margins.
genuine problem, but you can't, it's hard to argue with the principle of retentions. I know subcontractors won't hear that, but you want to take, if you're the principal, you want retentions. If you're the head contractor, you want some retention so that you get the performance at the end.
Yes.
If they do the job, the retentions get released. Now, question, what do you do if you're not paid? Well, firstly, are you the only one not being paid? So maybe there's a way of saving legal fees is to get together with the other contractors that haven't been paid and share some costs. Maybe there's more of a collective bit of action there rather than, 10 subcontractors hiring 10 different lawyers, all who've got 10 different approaches.
That's some great advice.
So maybe just have a chat with your everyone. I mean, it's a small industry. You're on a job, you've been working on the job, you know who's there. Just pick up the phone to your mate and say, did they do this to you? Obviously, they should see their own individual lawyers, but maybe there's a way of saving costs and a bit of collective action. Secondly, what does a contract actually say? If there is no contractual basis to take people's money, it's a breach of contract, but it could be worse, right? You can't take other people's money. It's a pretty fundamental principle of law, right? So there will be some recourse. Your problem is when it's, a small amount of money and, it's 20 grand and your lawyer's telling you it's 20 grand to get it back. What do? There are things, more collective action, talking to people, really putting some pressure on, and also just making sure that everyone if that's what the contractor's done every time, then he should be known as that contractor. If that's how they run projects, then don't tender with those guys again, right?
So are you seeing matters go to trial, or are you seeing anything that's looking like litigation is ending up being settled prior to that?
Yeah, all of the above. I mean, it goes with the market, I think. When there's a lot of money slushing around and new jobs to do, people tend to sort it out, because we'll make it up on the next one. Mm-hmm. But when there's a squeeze, there is no next one, or it's catastrophically difficult. So that's when the disputes of the wider sense start, when it's tight. And it's tight for the principal, it's tight for the head contractor, and it's tight for the subbies. So it'd be no surprise that this is a tough market. It's good and bad under the construction because that is its own way of dealing with the disputes, because there's turning up to high court, sure, but there's a whole other bunch of remedies under the Construction Contracts Act and under the contracts that they sign, which effectively is arbitration rather than court or adjudication. And adjudication is supposed to be is a quick fire resolution process under the contract, because what's happened over the years is high courts got really expensive, or district courts got really expensive, so then everyone went to arbitration. Arbitration's got really expensive now, and follows much of the high court procedures. So under construction contract, we recognise, because of cash flow, because of timing, because of pressure, you need answers quickly. And under the contract, a lot of those are made by the engineer to the contract on a monthly basis, daily basis. But also there's an adjudication, which is a quick fire. So I strongly recommend people understanding the dispute resolution procedures. And again, chat to your lawyer, they'll tell you about that, because you can fire that off and get a ruling pretty quickly and pretty cheaply, relatively cheaply, certainly relative to high court or arbitration. So that's a good method. As disputes involve don't ask me to describe the overlay between adjudication, arbitration, and high court, because it's tricky. But there are remedies there, and it's not about just tripping up to court and spending an awful lot of money and waiting a year for a remedy. There are quicker ways to do it.
How about when a business is looking like they're potentially insolvent? When should they come to speak to a lawyer?
You mean when they're potentially insolvent,
yes,
or when they think the counterparty is potentially insolvent, or both?
Both, either or either, yeah.
Yeah, so the law's pretty clear on that, right? You can't trade while insolvent. So you've got to be able to test under the Companies Act, you've got to be able to pay your debts when they're due, and you've got to be balance sheet insolvent, which effectively, in simple terms, just means your assets are bigger than your liabilities, right? If you're not, then you're trading while insolvent, and that attracts personal liability for directors. Now, that's scary. So you don't want to be in that position, and you don't want to be hoping it's okay. You don't want to keep on trading and try and trade your way out of it, because the benefit of a limited liability company is you have limited liability. If you keep on trading, you haven't got limited liability. You're suddenly being personally liable for all those things. So the answer, again, is early. Again, if you're across, and we've got lots of things to help you now, you should be across your cash flow. Again, people say I'm naive, but it's your business. You should know where your cash flow is. You know where the pinch points are. You know when cash is going to be tight. So do you have sufficient reserves? Don't you? And when you get into that, approaching that, you really want to start taking action early, planning. Don't just hope it'll be all right. This is this is a theme for today.
Yes.
Don't hope it's going to be all right, because life ain't like that. Plan. So go early, and do see, it might be your accountant, or it might be a lawyer. How is cash flow? What can we do? Can I get more facility from the bank? What can I get some help through this short period? But overall, be honest with yourself. Is it a short period, or is there something systemically wrong with the business or your business? Is it just a short cash flow problem for one project for a month that you can take an overdraft for? or are you actually facing bigger issues? And again, it is really hard, and I don't underestimate this at all. I've had meetings like this. I've had directors in tears. It's really hard making people face the reality of an insolvency. It's just horrible. But if it's going to happen, you're better to deal with it and face it and manage it.
You need to have the information to be able to make that decision.
And you need to think about you need to think about your obligations to your staff. Primarily, you need to think about your obligations to your creditors, the IRD, your suppliers. There's a lot of people hanging off your decisions that you might be making on the fly, and I would strongly recommend you don't do that. Look at your business, look at your cash flows, make a plan, talk to people, go and see your lawyer or your accountant, be honest with yourself. It's hard, I'm not. One of the problems is in insolvency, and we do a lot of this at Cuncannon, is that you don't want to be on a hair trigger where you're a short-term cash flow problem and you wind yourself up. Clearly that's crazy. But equally, if you leave it too late and you're trading while insolvent and things are getting worse, that's crazy. So you just need to talk to some sensible people about where you are so you can make informed decisions. And you're making decisions at that point, obviously for you, for your family, but you're making decisions for everyone in that chain, up and down. And that's the thing. It's what I'm trying to articulate here. It's a web. I can draw a wire diagram of principal, contractor, subcontractors, but it's a web, right? It's a lot of people that are dependent on a lot of moving parts. So think about that within a project, think about that across your projects, and think about that with your relationships. So you need to have all those in your mind to make reasonable decisions. And it's really hard when you're in the storm, when you're fighting for your life for a business. I don't underestimate that at all, but it is good to talk. And that might be embarrassing for subcontractors and people who think they can manage it themselves and they've never had to rely on anyone, but that is the wrong way to go. Find someone you trust, your lawyer, your accountant, talk to them, work it through, see what the issue is, manage it. Manage your way out of it, or manage your way into limiting your personal liability.
I think that's some really great advice. And again, it comes back to people. It comes back to communication. You're a lawyer.
I'm a lawyer, but
I
deal with people. It's a people business. You always talking to people, and I never presume I understand their business or their particular circumstances, which is why I ask. Because how can you protect somebody? They come in, can I have a standard form contract for this thing? Do I know that they've got 10 other projects going in which are in peril? I don't unless I ask, they have to tell me. If anyone you can trust, it's your lawyer. It's privileged. You can talk to your lawyer about these things. Get a good grip of what their business is, the position of their business. Can they do this job? Should they do this job? Are they just doubling down? Gambler's fallacy. You're keeping on gambling here. Certainly, you're not going to throw six every time.
How do these business owners know that they've got a good lawyer?
I just think you talk to people at wherever you talk to people over a beer, at the club, whatever you do, just talk to people and see what kind of advice. There's tremendous lawyers who are family lawyers that have worked with the business for years and years and years and understand it. And you won't get a better result from just going to an expensive lawyer at a big firm. So I'm not suggesting that for a moment, but it is beholden on you to critically analyse whether that lawyer is competent for the question you're asking. And just ask your lawyer. We've all got strengths and weaknesses. We've all got areas of expertise. I'm in a law firm with people who specialise in insolvency. I might talk to clients about it, but I will pull in that specialist to say, look, what do you think? Because they've had 20, 30 years doing that. I've had 20 and 30 years at the front end. So you talk, you ask the question, and if you feel uncomfortable, you can always seek other advice.
That's some really great advice. So what would be your number one tip for any SME business owner in the construction sector to take away today to improve their business going forward?
Take stock. Think about what you've got on. Think about whether these are sort of temporary issues, long-term issues. Think about where your risks really are. Just take stock. I'd say, when's the last time you sat back and, tell me your top 10 risks? And they'll say something about supply chain, or they'll say something about staff. And I'm like, well, what though? For this job, generally, you want to see someone just really take stock of their business. They know their business, but there's knowing their business, and then there's actually articulating it. And I think a good lawyer is looking to protect, you're looking to protect your client. You're not looking to make the most money on a job. You're looking for them to have longevity in their business. So talk to them, get them to open up about the risks of a job, but also that'll open up generally the risks. And then try and, can you manage that risk? So if you can't manage it, don't take that risk. That's where the problem comes. It'll be all right. I'll agree to this job. I'll find someone. I'll get an alternative. Oh, my supplier's gone bust, but I'll get another one. Well, do you? Have you? Tell me, is that realistic or is that just a hope? They're going to make the commercial decision. The lawyer gets the business, doesn't have to make that business decision, but it should be their job to get that person to think about it critically and ask the question. Then if they take the risk, they take the risk in full knowledge. It's hard when you're busy, life's busy, it's got faster, it's getting faster, but take stock, I think. And then go and chat to your lawyer, chat to your accountant, chat to someone you trust, chat to someone with the relevant experience to make sure that you're doing the right thing in the right way. $1 at the front saves you 10 or 20 at the end.
That's amazing advice. Thank you so much for joining me on the Fix and Fly podcast.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you enjoy the Fix and Fly podcast, make sure you like, comment and subscribe and share with anyone you think will find this useful. We look forward to seeing you next time.